The times have changed, so has the delivery of news. We believe local news needs to be easily accessible. Hey, Owensboro, get with the times. Subscribe today at owensborotimes.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Owensboro Times 2022 General Election Town Hall, sponsored by Jerry Ray Davis Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. I'm Jake Boswell. I'll be moderating this fourth of our 8 sessions this evening in Davis County, and for this session, we'll be joined by the 2 candidates for District Judge. Candidates are going to have 60 seconds to answer each of our questions, plus an additional 60 seconds at the end to give a closing statement. Let's introduce our candidates and get right into it. Nick Payne and Shannon Meyer. Mr. Payne, from a random selection drawing, you were chosen to go first, and this first question is to you. A district court judge presides over a wide range of cases. What qualifies you to preside over cases in all these areas?
I guess what really qualifies me is that since the day I graduated law school in 1999, I have been a full-time in-court attorney, either with the PD's office, clerking for a judge that got me experience in all varieties of law, and then for the last 20 years, been a full-time prosecutor in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. In that capacity, I've been in court at all times with my career. And being in court teaches you to think on your feet, to know the law, and to be able to be prepared for whatever arguments, whatever comes in front of you at any given time. You learn that you need to be prepared in front of that jury or in front of the judge. So based on all of that, my career, been practicing since 1999, graduating law school, and being well prepared and well versed in all areas of the law, I'm prepared to do the job of district court judge. Thank you.
Ms. Meyer, same question.
Well, I'm qualified for this particular position because I did spend 21 years as a prosecutor in our Davis County Attorney's Office. It is through that experience that I spent all of my time solely in district court, and that is, of course, the position for which I'm running. That position allowed me to be the firm but fair judge that I am. I'm firm in my expectations that people follow the law, and I'm also firm in my belief that there is accountability that everybody should have for their behavior. Lastly, for the past year, I've been hearing all of our district court cases in Division 3. I've been hearing probate. I've been hearing our adult guardianship cases, our involuntary hospitalization cases. And I'm going to humbly tell you that I'm told that the work I'm doing a good job. And I firmly believe that that is a reflection of the fact that I absolutely love the job that I'm doing.
Let's move on to our second question, and Ms. Meyer, you get the chance to answer this one first. What methods would you suggest to improve court procedures and efficiencies as to where they stand right now?
Well, I first want to say that I think that our court system runs very efficiently in district court, and I want to credit our Davis County Circuit Court Clerk's Office for that. We have great deputy staff that's there in court with me. Some of the things that I've been doing is I certainly start my arraignment court, which typically can be a long day on Tuesdays. I start those cases early if people are there early. We typically start at 1, but if there are people there at noon, I go ahead and try to get to them so that they've not spent their entire day there in court on, say, traffic and certain misdemeanor cases. The other thing that I'm entertaining the idea of, and of course it would involve lots of different moving parts, such as our court security and our clerk staff, but I certainly would entertain the idea of hearing cases after hours. Again, I think to avoid people having to miss work to appear there for their misdemeanor cases. But again, otherwise, I think we run pretty smoothly, and I'm very appreciative of my staff for helping me to do that.
Mr. Payne?
Yes. Efficiency can always be improved in any court system. I've been in a courtroom now for 20 years, and the needless continuances that are sometimes asked for. Sometimes it's because someone's out of jail and it's just being continued kind of to delay the inevitable or delay possibly. So a judge needs to be aware, and in the courtroom I have been aware, when a continuance is needed. Sometimes discovery, sometimes to go over issues, sometimes for an issue of the law. In those times, a continuance is needed. But if it's not, if it's just a delay tactic, a judge needs to be aware of that, hold people's feet to the fire and say, no, it needs to be resolved. Let's resolve this case, clear set date, timely manner, because justice delayed can be justice denied in many, many cases. And so as a district court judge, I will move to be efficient. I will move to move cases along and to avoid needless delays for the people in the courtroom, both the attorneys, the victims, the defendants, and everyone, to make sure that justice is being done faster.
Let's move on to our third question. And Mr. Payne, this one comes to you first. Juvenile crime has risen over the last year, and especially in this district judge race, it's an important question. What's the role of the court in helping reduce the number of repeat juvenile offenders?
This has been an issue. I ran 2 years ago. It was an issue then. I made it an issue in my campaign. Juvenile justice definitely needs to be addressed, and the district court judge is the best place that it can be addressed. They are the ones that first see the juvenile. They're the ones that know the trailers. They are with trailers how many cases a juvenile may have, and know the facts. You know, as a Commonwealth attorney right now, when the juvenile sees me, it's because they're a youthful offender, and at that point, it's too late. Their lives are ruined. They're convicted felons, and their time for intervention is gone. The time for intervention is in district court. They need to work closely with everybody involved in the juvenile system, the DJJ, the CDWs, to seek out alternatives if they're necessary. They need to follow the rights of the juvenile too, though. They can't violate rules and laws that have been set, but once they do, they need to hold the juveniles accountable, get them in the help they need, in the situations they need to address the problem of this growing juvenile crime.
Ms. Meyer, I'll restate the question, same question for you. What role does the court have in helping reduce the number of repeat juvenile offenders in Davis County?
Well, as your sitting district court judge, I have a responsibility, of course, to address the children who are already in our system. Unfortunately, what I'm seeing far too often is too many cases with children having multiple offenses in my courtroom. Each time that a child is before me, I'm very clear with the consequences to ensure that justice is served in our community. I think part of what I've been doing is researching various intervention philosophies, such as it being surveillance, restorative programs, whether it be restitution or fixing the damage that has been caused or the harm that's been brought. And lastly, and very important to me, are skill-building programs, whether it be behavioral, academic, or job skills. Research shows that early intervention with these skill-building programs is imperative to reduce the number of repeat offenders in juvenile court. I certainly will support all agencies' efforts to help do that at an early age.
Let's move on to our next question. Along the lines of repeat offenders, we've talked about that just a little bit there. Some people show an escalating degree of offenses, working their way up from misdemeanors in a place like district court, maybe to felonies that would move along to the grand jury and maybe all the way to circuit court. Those felonies can escalate someday to maybe assault, murder, serious violent crime. What role, if any, does the court have in helping identify individuals and intervening before they get to that point? Ms. Meyer, I'll let you go first.
Well, I think the court's role in early intervention, again, is to be supportive of our local agencies who can provide services, whether it be counseling, because the various life experiences that these children have when they come into court. Unfortunately, many of them are from broken homes, and they need coping skills within which they're able to basically comply with our laws. I'm seeing many, many instances of whether it be possession of a handgun or assault, all seemingly stemming from a lack of coping skills. So I think that that's very important. Another thing is really to have some changes in our laws. I think it's very important that we recognize that possession of a handgun first is a misdemeanor, possession of a handgun second is a felony. That in and of itself is just a slap on the wrist by our laws. First offense is a slap, the second offense it's a felony charge. So I think looking at those two things, early intervention as well as some change in our laws, is going to go very far in helping us with juvenile crime.
Mr. Payne, the same question to you. What role do you think the court has in helping identify individuals and maybe intervening before their charges or pattern of history escalates to more serious crime?
You know, district court is the first line of intervention. for most people. It's where they start out as a criminal defendant. It's where people go to seek help. They can intervene in many ways. With Rocket Docket, they can move cases along faster to get people into treatment faster before they escalate. Domestic violence cases arise in district court. I think district court judges need to monitor those situations because in domestic violence are probably one of the most serious cases a district court can see, because one loss of control, one loss of repeat offender that they've let out or that is out of custody could end up being a much more serious charge where the community is hurt. I think monitoring that, and then in the juvenile cases, you monitor the repeat offenders, you monitor them and get them in with the community that can help, and the programs that are out there, whether it be mental health court, whether it be juvenile drug court, whether it be any of these juvenile programs and programs to help people get the help they need faster to help stop for repeat offenders.
Let's move on to our next question. And Mr. Payne, you get the chance at this one first. Do you think there should be any judicial reform for those who are given lengthy sentences, maybe for nonviolent crimes, or who have good behavior while incarcerated?
You know, in circuit court, I think that's a much more concern because there are much more realms of penalties. In district court, there are not quite as many penalties. It's probation, or they're going to the county jail for a while. The violent crimes are getting moved up and moved in faster. You know, I think judicial reform is needed always when they you look at situations and go, these people need help. Nonviolent crimes, they don't need to be clogging up the system. They don't need to be clogging up the district court docket. If you can move them through faster, that is a way to do it. Rocket Docket was started at the Commonwealth Attorney's Office while I was there. And that helps move and unclog the system and gets nonviolent offenders out of district court faster and into circuit court where they can get the treatment, or out of court even to get the treatment they need. There are other programs out there, but reform always needs to be looked at in district court, but it's not as much necessary as it might be in circuit court.
Ms. Meyer, the same question.
If I understood the question correctly, you're asking about judicial reform with respect to lengthening sentences for nonviolent offenses and also more lenient sentences, or making sure that there's time for good behavior.
Yeah, if people are incarcerated, they have good behavior, what do you think should be, if reformed, if any, there?
Well, I think the important thing to note here is in district court, we're not subject to different sentencing guidelines as much as they are in circuit court. My biggest concern and frustration in district court has come in our juvenile system. I don't think many people, especially our voters, are understanding that there is, the law restricts the amount of time in which a juvenile can be held in a secure detention facility. It has nothing to do with whether or not the charge is a misdemeanor or a felony. It has to do with the age of a child. So certain ages can be held for up to 45 days, the maximum of which can be 90 days. That's extremely frustrating to me when I've got kids in my court who are charged with possession of handguns, violent offenses such as assault, terroristic threatening. So that's the type of judicial reform I think we need. When the laws were enacted years ago for our juveniles, roughly 2015, I don't think that the types of crimes that were being committed by our juveniles are of the severity that they are today, and it's very concerning to me that our laws don't appropriately fit the crimes that they're committing.
Well, our next question kind of stays along those same lines when it comes to sentencing. What are your views on alternative sentences for non-violent offenders specifically, Ms. Meyer?
Sure. I think for alternative sentencing, of course, in district court, we're required, before a child is remanded into the custody of a secure detention facility, we're required to look at less restrictive alternatives for those offenders. Some of that includes ankle monitoring. I think sometimes that it's appropriate, not only ankle monitoring with strict restrictions to stay at home, but also there are group homes that are run by our state that are also just for ankle monitor offendees. I don't have very much experience with that because we don't have one of those facilities here. Our Department of Juvenile Justice, of course, has been severely understaffed and underfunded for some time. They're under a lot of scrutiny right now. I would like to work closely, and I have in fact spoken with the Commissioner of the Department of Juvenile Justice to see what other alternatives are available. But right now, the seriousness of our crimes really involve consideration of secure detention.
Mr. Payne, the same question to you. What your thoughts on alternative sentences for nonviolent offenders?
You know, nonviolent offenders, especially in district court, we're talking about people that are shoplifters that would be under the misdemeanor amount. With those, you know, there are alternate incarcerations, but you have to look at how many times they've been on, whether they're on probation. You know, most people in district court are getting out on some kind of probation. It's unmonitored in district court, so the judge and the prosecutor's office needs to monitor those better so that when the repeat offenders, even if they're nonviolent, if they are still repeat offending and still bringing forth the same charges, they need to be looked at as an alternative sentence to that probation even, and maybe have some of that probation revoked or make sure they do some time so that maybe they do not re-escalate into a more serious crime. There are, you know, not a lot of alternative sentencing guidelines in district court. It's basically the probation or the amount of time, but you need to look at the things that are available, like drug court and things like that, and move them along.
Well, this is our final of our prepared questions. Each of you have built a career in the legal system, longtime prosecutors specifically, so you should have perspective. What do you see, Mr. Payne? You can go first. What do you perceive as the greatest obstacle to justice right now?
The greatest obstacle to justice in our system, again, you know, that can go two different ways. One is, what is justice? Is justice the Old Testament, an eye for an eye, you know, or is it turn the other cheek in the New Testament? Is justice the same to one defendant as it is the victim? You know, justice really can't be defined. As a prosecutor for the last 21 years in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, trying cases, trying a variety of cases, you know, you've seen that what I've done is try to provide justice to victims that are in need. What I've also seen within my career in the law is that really the law does not always provide justice. There are what some people would call loopholes. There are some people that, you know, there are guidelines, there are time limits, there are restrictions. Those have to be followed. As a judge, my job really isn't to ensure justice, it's to ensure that the law is followed, and once that law is followed, then to provide the right decision based on the law. Sometimes that won't be justice for everyone, unfortunately.
Ms. Meyer, I'll give you a chance to answer the same question.
I find that the greatest obstacle to achieving justice in our court system is much like Judge Wethington's answer previously, and that is I have a strong concern for the fact that a lot of folks simply are uneducated about our judicial system, and I fault part of that, you know, on our judges. I think we have a responsibility to educate our community through consistent rulings, to educate about the process, about the role of the law and our obligation not to make law, but certainly to follow the existing law. I think that we have an obligation as judges, along with our legal community, to also educate their clients about what they can expect from the judicial system. So I think once we have reasonable expectations and we have a working knowledge of the process, then that will yield better results with respect to justice being served.
That ends our prepared questions for each of you, but we stated at the beginning you each get 60 seconds for closing remarks. And Ms. Meyer, the way things have kind of gone back and forth, you get the first crack at that.
Yes. I want to thank everybody for your time and for this opportunity. I'm asking the voters of Davis County to consider the qualities that make for a great judge. I'm passionate about our community. I am proven in the courtroom, and I act with integrity both on and off the bench. I will ensure that justice is served in our community. I will always do what is right, not what is easy. If I haven't yet had the opportunity to speak with you about my qualifications, I encourage you to reach out to me via my website or to call my office. It's 687-7217. I also encourage you to speak with your family and your friends, your colleagues, also anybody who works in the judicial system. I think that it's important that we understand the qualifications that each of us bring to the table, and anything that I can do to answer your questions, I'm certainly glad to do. I'm Judge Shannon Meyer, and I am asking for your vote on November the 8th.
Mr. Payne, your opportunity for your closing statement.
Yes. Thank you all for watching and being here today. Again, my name is J. Nick Payne, and I am running to be your next district court judge. I'm born and raised in this community. I've lived and worked in Owensboro, Kentucky my whole life, with the exception of 2 years right out of law school, where I was a public defender and then clerked for a judge before coming back here. I'm raising my family in this community, and I've been a prosecutor here full-time in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office in court, trying cases of all varieties here in this community. I have been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police based on my record, and I'm asking also for each and every one of you to look at our qualifications, to seek us out, ask us the tough questions, and in the end, you'll find that I believe that I'm your best candidate for the district court judge job. I have the judicial demeanor, I have the judicial knowledge, I have the time in the courtroom that will make a district court judge and be your next district court judge a good experience. Thank you.
That wraps up this session. Thanks to everybody for being here in person. Thank you for making the time to watch at home. These are our candidates here today of our fourth session. We have 4 more to go this evening. We want to thank the Bluegrass Music Hall of Fame and Museum for allowing us to host the town hall here at their great facility. And a thank you to our sponsor, once again, Jerry Ray Davis, Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. We want to leave you with that message, as both candidates stated. November 8th is Election Day. Make sure no matter who you vote for, you go out and vote. Ladies and gentlemen, our candidates in Davis County for District Judge.